take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
I'm a human being, god damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Welcome to Truth or Talk. I'm April Bowden.
I'm Virstyne Henry.
You can check out our website at truthertalk.com. You can like us on Facebook if you wish, or tweet us, follow us on Twitter, and follow us on MeWe. We're also on World Truth. Or no, we're not on World Truth. I don't have a fan page yet, but I do have a personal page, so you can find me there. And friend request me.
Have Jeanice, Barcelo.
We do. We have. We've been very excited to have her on. We've been talking about having her on for a little bit, and since we first became aware of her work, because it's so groundbreaking and so different than what anybody else is doing. So this should be really interesting. Really.
Yeah. I think we both kind of came across her at the same time, because I think you were telling me that you had just found out about her, and then like the same week, I just happened to be listening to an interview. I think it was with her and Dr. Carly. And you're like, oh, you were like telling me about her. I was like, oh, I know her. I totally want to have her on.
Yeah.
She seems really amazing, and the work she
does
is really interesting.
Yeah, I had like all these people in the same week, like within the span of like 3 or 4 days, tell me that I should look into her work. I had Bob Tuskin, Clint Richardson, Leslie Carol Botha, and one other, and then my friend Kim Dorich, who was a former guest on our show. I had written that article, Birthing in America, Setting the Stage for Autism, and when I wrote that, I wasn't familiar with her work, but I described the birth trauma and the birth rape situation, and so that I had experienced with both my first 2 children, especially with Aiden. And someone who read it, my friend Kim, said, oh, you should be familiar with Jeanice Barcelo. And I went, oh, wow, okay. And then, like, a couple days later, it was like Leslie, and then it was a couple days later, it was like Clint, and I was like, oh, my God, everybody's saying... Yeah, and it was just one after another, and I was going, oh, I really need to look into this lady's work. And when I did,
that's one thing.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying that's one thing I've learned is when multiple people tell you to look into something, then it's a sign.
Absolutely. That's something you need to know. It's like, especially when it's like, it's so grouped in together, because I had done Bob Tuskin's show, and now I'm remembering how this all came about, and I didn't know what we were going to be talking about, but somehow we ended up talking about birth trauma. And he was explaining his experience with his child being born, and because the men experience it too. And that's another thing that she gets into, is like, it's not just the women. I mean, the women are being the ones that are being put through the torture and the rape, and the men are supposed to watch it, because this, I would say, I haven't read her book yet, but I would say what it does to the men is it makes them feel powerless to protect their women and their children. And it was interesting to me, because I'd heard her talking about that, about how the men are traumatized as well. And of course, I'm such a big fan of Louis C.K., and I was listening to one of his interviews one time, and he started talking about his the birth of his daughter, and he started crying, because he said it was how traumatic it was that when they took the child and they started, he was like really upset with what they were doing to her. They were like plugging her and slapping her, and and how frightened that made him feel, as far as like watching his child being hurt. And when the child would cry, and he was like, oh my God, I felt so helpless. And I thought, wow, that's really explaining it like that. perspective. And he did, yeah, exactly. And he doesn't, and he's not talking about any of this, but he was like disgusted by it, like how they treated his daughter. And I thought, he doesn't, as far as I know, he doesn't know anything about this stuff. And if he does, he's not talking about it like that. But he just described it, and it was so, I thought, wow, I bet this is true of a lot of men who feel that way, who feel kind of helpless, and their woman's just there, and they don't know any better, and so they're just allowing this to be done to them, and they must feel so, helpless.
What I thought about
so emasculated.
What I thought about too is really interesting, is how they didn't allow men in the the 50s or whatever. They didn't allow them into the room either, to the birthing room for a while, right? When women were in hospitals, they didn't allow men to come in the back and be with the woman as she gave birth.
Yeah, it sounds like before.
I wonder, but I'm just curious. I don't know exactly when did they decide to let the men in, and yeah, I would imagine. I don't know. I don't know when that change took place. Maybe in the 60s or 70s. I'm not sure. But I just thought it was interesting. So then, they're doing a lot to the women, and the man's not even around. So I'm just thinking, was it more?
They've made.
I don't know.
They've made the men feel like they're useless and they have no part in no involvement in the
no involvement. Got you? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just this is her, and this is for women, and this is what women go through, and obviously they're not. The woman is doing most of the work there, but their job as is to be their protector and their provider, and they're supposed to be there to make sure that the child is being cared for. And so my husband, when I was giving birth to Aiden, he was trying to coach me and saying, comforting things like, it's okay, you because I was in such excruciating pain and I was crying and screaming, and he was traumatized by watching me go through that. And the nurse as well, she was also they were both kind of holy shit, they didn't, she didn't, the nurse probably sees it all the time, but yeah. She had enough, she possessed enough empathy to not be desensitized to it,
yeah.
And actually was trying to help me, because I think nurses more than the doctors are patient advocates, and they try to
yeah.
not all.
And they're kind of beholden to the doctors too, because they can't really do anything without the doctor's approval.
Exactly.
So they see a lot of stuff that goes. They really feel powerless to do anything about, because they can't do anything without the approval of the doctor.
And yeah, and it was but the doctor, Mr. Satan, he
Mr. Satan, that's right.
He told my husband he was going to kick him out of the room for encouraging me, because it was yeah, Aiden, do you remember? He was it was deterring him from his work. So that's just to tell you a little bit about that guy. So he was trying to tell my husband that he was going to have to leave if he didn't shut up. He did tell him that.
What a jerk, dude.
I know, this guy's a piece of work. But anyway, we're going to take a short break because we want to have enough time to talk to Jeanice and get into this. So please stay with us. We will be right back.
Everything I'm looking at seems crazy. The newspaper, the television, nothing's right. Nothing's telling me what's true. It's like I fell into a bucket of cream and kicked my legs until I became a mouse. What's that about? I'm a conspiracy realist, not a conspiracy theorist. I want a t-shirt that represents me. What? There's one that's available? Go to shop.truthertease.com, says the voice in my head. Shop.truthertease.com. It's not crazy. I'm not afraid to go on the internet and go to shop.truthertease.com. I'm not scared. I've taken out bowling balls that look like you. That's what I said. Straighten out. Get your conspiracy realist t-shirt. Don't make me come over there. You look good.
Hey, welcome back. Thanks for listening to Truth or Talk. Today we are talking to Jeanice Barcelo. Jeanice is a researcher, writer, educator, and activist dedicated to exposing and transforming the dark side of modern medicine. She is especially concerned about the violence being perpetrated against mothers and infants during hospital birth, but also speaks out about other evils such as vaccines, GMO foods, chemtrails, nuclear power and radiation, child abuse, pornography, animal abuse, and satanic takeover of our planet. Her use of the word satanic has nothing to do with being a fundamental Christian and everything to do with awareness that there are people in very high positions of power who worship evil and who will stop at nothing to create chaos, suffering, deprivation, and destruction on this planet. For more information on Jeanice, please check out her website at birthofanewearth.com. Her YouTube channel is youtube.com/birthofanewearth. Her latest book, Birth Trauma and the Dark Side of Modern Medicine, is available for purchase at Amazon. So please welcome to the show with Jeanice Barcelo. Hi, Jeanice.
Hey, April. Thanks so much for having me.
Hi, Jeanice. How are you?
Yeah, we're excited to have you. It's very honored to have you on our show.
Yeah, so, I'm just curious, but would you please explain what is birth trauma or birth rape and how you started researching it?
Which one do you want me to explain, birth trauma or birth rape?
Oh, wow. Okay, why don't you start with birth trauma?
All right, birth trauma is any birth experience that leaves a mother, baby, or any family member traumatized by the experience itself. So we recently had a study done. William Emerson is a leader in the field of healing birth trauma, and he found that 95% of American hospital births are considered traumatic, and that half of those are considered severely traumatic. So we have a very severe situation in the United States in terms of abuse being inflicted on mothers and babies during hospital birth, fathers having to stand by and witness their infants and their partners being traumatized, being hurt, and they're not able to do anything about it. Families are breaking down because of the extreme amounts of trauma that's happening during birth, and of course, babies are being poisoned. While they're in the womb, they're being traumatized through ultrasound, and as soon as they come out of the womb, they're being poisoned through vaccines and a variety of other things that the medical system is doing. My work is exposing the fact that the medical system is controlled by Luciferians. We have a very sinister group that is behind the medical system. And everything that they have conjured up, and I say conjured up because they are occult black magicians. All right, the protocols that they have created for hospital birth are methodical, purposeful, intended to do harm to mothers, to babies, to families, and to mankind. This is a group of people that does not have our best interests at heart, and on the contrary, they are determined to destroy us or to alter us to such an extent that we will become willing servants to them, which most of us have become. There is a reason that we use a very small portion of our brain potential, and that most of our DNA is dormant. That reason is because we have been altered. We have been altered genetically through vaccines, through GMO foods, through nuclear radiation, through the machinations of these Luciferian forces. And we have been altered. We have brain damage because of the trauma that has been purposefully inflicted on us through hospital births. So I want to clarify that not everybody that works in the medical system is aware of what they are a part of. Medical students are also put through what I would refer to as trauma-based mind control. Medical training is like military training. It is designed to get people to dissociate so that alter personalities can step in, and that these personalities will be willing to do the horrific things that are required for them to do to be part of the medical system or to be part of the military. This is not normal. What's happening in medical school is not normal. Medical training is despicable. I have talked about this at some length in my book, Birth Trauma and the Dark Side of Modern Medicine. I have exposed what the students are forced to do during medical training, including the torture of animals on a regular basis as part of their training, especially the torture of dogs. And we can go into that if you want to, or we cannot. I'm not sure how deep you want to go during this conversation, ladies. It's an intense
we're going to go deep.
Yeah.
You can go deep.
Yeah.
We're on this level. We're ready. We're ready.
I kind of want to, give your listeners a warning that this material can really shake people up because we've been in so much denial and we are suffering from being under the mind control. Okay, so that we've not been willing to see what should be very obvious at this point about the evils of the medical system. So it's hard for people to hear, and I just want to honor that, and I want to say if you find yourself getting activated during this conversation, if you believe that you've had birth trauma or that your children have had birth trauma, I do work with people individually through Skype for the specific purpose of healing birth trauma. So feel free to contact me through my website at birthofanewearth.com.
Cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, I certainly did have birth trauma because I have 3 children, and my first 2 were hospital births, and they were both quite traumatic, especially the second one, my son Aiden, who would later develop into autism. It was very traumatic, and I wrote about it in one of my essays, Birthing in America. It was called Birthing in America, Setting the Stage for Autism, because I recognized how it starts in the womb, and not only from the procedures that they do, but the torture that the doctor puts you through when you're going through the prenatal service. We had a doctor who was especially nuts or evil, I would say. Yeah. I mean, because I know as you're saying that it's not all the doctors and nurses. They're not necessarily in on it. They don't necessarily understand what they're doing. This guy really was probably quite sociopathic because he didn't seem to care about the trauma that he was putting me through.
Yeah.
And, he suggested, because I didn't want to have an induction of labor 3 days before my baby was due, he suggested that the baby would die. He made that comment literally to me that, well, there's nothing worse, nothing sadder than giving birth to a dead baby, he says to me. So he's trying to, he was trying to terrorize me into doing what he wanted me to do for his own selfish purposes, not because I was in any need or any danger of having a child that was ill. They made him ill,
yeah,
but he wasn't conceived. He wasn't that way at conception, and not to the extent that he would later become. And then they also subjected me, because I didn't have the want to do the inductions. They had us do a series of ultrasounds, and those also, even at the time, I kind of thought was I couldn't understand why they were doing it, but he had put me in such a state of terror, suggesting that the baby would die, and making comments that I would have to have a C-section and this and that, and I didn't, but it wasn't necessary. I was quite healthy, and so was the baby. But they were just putting us through that, and it was very, very traumatic. So I'm with you. I totally understand what you're talking about as far as birth trauma, and I believe that it is 95%. Because even my first child, who was born in a hospital, it wasn't the same. It wasn't as traumatic, but I could still see that it could have been done a lot better. As when I had the third, we didn't do it in a hospital, and it wasn't traumatic at all. It was like no big deal. And it was just, and then I went, oh, this is how it's supposed to be done. Because I had a midwife instead, and I felt not, during the whole prenatal experience, I didn't feel stressed. I didn't, I was just, it was fine. I just went about my life.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was, yeah, she speaks up in the background.
So I think it's important to stress your experience, April, and to point out that ultrasound is being used. The reason that they're doing this is to cause brain damage. They have known for more than 100 years that ultrasound alters the developing brain and the developing genitals of a baby. Mm. They are using ultrasound technology as a form of contraception. So if you expose an adult male scrotum to 2 15-minute blasts of ultrasound, that adult man will be sterile for 6 months minimum, and it can be permanent. So I want people to understand that this is being used as a way to create infertility in the future children by blasting these frequencies at their genitals while they're in the womb. They're developing testes and ovaries. They have known that in the developing brain, neurons that are intended for the cortex never make their way to the cortex. They stay in the lower parts of the brain, which means that the cortex will be underdeveloped, and it will be severely underdeveloped, the more ultrasound that the baby is exposed to. So they're deliberately altering the brain. They're deliberately causing brain damage. And this is what sets the stage for autism, all right? It's the beginning of the alteration. And then they do a series of things like induction, and we can go into detail about what's going on there, like vaccines, like the introduction of pitocin, a drug that also will alter the baby's oxytocin receptor sites for life. All of these things that they're doing, every single one of the things that they do alters the developing brain. And it alters that baby's capacity to experience love throughout its life. Vaccines are something that will naturally throw the baby over the edge, because now we're introducing aborted human fetal tissue, we're introducing monkey kidney, pig blood, bovine fetal serum, guinea pig brains, caterpillar eggs, mercury, aluminum, formaldehyde, MSG, aspartame, unbelievable levels of neurotoxins, and DNA from other humans that have been murdered by their own mothers through abortion, and the DNA of other animals, and injecting this directly into the bloodstream of children, newborn children.
Right.
So, of course, the vaccines are biological weapons. The vaccines are designed to genetically mutate mankind. That is their purpose. And I don't care what anybody says. The deeper you go into this territory, the more clear it becomes. The extraordinary levels of evil, and the attacks that were in there.
Oh, definitely. April and I, when we first started, are you familiar with Gwen Olson, who's a pharmaceutical rep, and came out, was talking about like the corruption in the pharmaceutical industry?
I've read very little, but yes, I know the name, and I think, yes.
So when we had her on, we were just talking before the show. We were preparing, and we were just like, okay, we're just going to stick to the pharmaceutical industry, because by that time, with our research, we'd already discovered the eugenics plan and just the deep. And we're like, we're not going to go into that. We're not going to make a big deal out of it. And then she started going down that road, and we were like, yes, because. You're right. The deeper you do go, you realize that this is done intentionally, and people know this stuff. It's not like, we're just experimenting and, accidents happen. No. People are doing this. Yeah. I talk to some of my friends who are kind of open. They don't cut me off necessarily. Even my family member, my brother's kind of like that. He's open, to listen to this stuff, but he just thinks that it's more like, science experimentation gone wrong, and just human nature or human beings trying to figure out how to do things right, as opposed to people doing this intentionally. And I think for a lot of people, that's the hardest thing to get past, to think that somebody can actually do this intentionally. No matter how much evidence is there, they have like that block, because they don't think like that, so they don't see how anybody else would think like that.
I think there's also an underlying terror that most people are walking the planet with. Most people intuitively know that there's extreme evil afoot, and they refuse to address their own intuitive knowing because it's terrifying. It's terrifying to look these demons in the face, and to say, we know what you are, we know what you're doing, and we're not willing to play your game anymore, because I say the word people when I refer to them. The word person or people, I use that word very loosely, because I think that we're actually dealing with a species that's been created by Lucifer, I don't think that they have a capacity for love the way that mankind. They're not designed the same way that mankind is designed. And they're incredibly envious of us. They despise us because they're extremely jealous of us, because we have this capacity to live in love, you see, and we have this capacity to be symbiotically in relationship with the Creator's design, with everything in the natural world. So these entities take great delight in destroying what the Creator has brought us. Everything in the natural world is under attack by these entities. And that includes us. We are under attack, and this is terrifying for people.
The humans, animals, the environment, you can see the way that the environment's being destroyed, life, plant, trees. You know, I've heard people theorize that they believe that it is an inhuman race, just because if you just look at, you know, all of the stuff that's going on with the planet, and it's just a really anti-human, anti-life agenda that seems to be going on.
It is. They're not. They look like us, but they're not like us. And this is the scary thing when you recognize that this is a spiritual battle. That Lucifer, if people understand the being Lucifer, who is in competition with God, who didn't want to be an underling, who wanted to prove that he was God's equal, okay, and he's got a lot of followers. There's a lot of practicing Satanists, a lot of practicing Luciferians on our planet, and they are involved in some of the most heinous crimes against life imaginable, and that includes what's happening during hospital birth. These same entities are behind it, okay? Women have been giving birth for millennia in the natural world, just like every other species. We did not perish. It is not part of God's design for us to perish or to be in pain when we give birth, because God is all about life. God is all about the regeneration and renewal of life. Even when humans come in, because they're so enmeshed in the Luciferian order, we come in with our cement and our toxic stuff, and we pave over everything that's beautiful and natural. In between the cracks, life comes, right? Flowers pop up in between the cracks in the cement, because that's the nature of God. God is pro-life. God has not designed any being to give birth in pain. All right, what is being said in the Bible, right, that God has commanded that women give birth in pain and that they suffer, should be an indication to people that they're worshiping a demon. All right, that God, the Judeo-Christian imposter, who has ordained that women give birth in trauma and in pain, who has told his followers to cut off the most sensitive part of their infant son's penis to create a covenant with him. The God that tells the Jewish people to march all around the planet and steal other people's land and take their women and children as booty. Right? That God that says, offer up those animals to me as a sacrifice, and offer up their firstborn children to me as a sacrifice. That God is Lucifer. And the overwhelming majority of people on this planet are worshiping him. And that is one of the world's one of his greatest achievements. Okay, to get everybody to worship God.
Okay. But they're doing it a lot. You think a majority, they're doing it unintentionally, right, or unwittingly.
They don't know what they're worshiping because they're under mind control. They just worship. Okay, they just do this dogmatic thing. Here, let me wear symbols of human sacrifice around my neck, and put the symbols of human sacrifice around my house, and go to church every week and drink the blood and eat the body parts of a sacrificed man.
Yeah.
And let's teach this to our kids. This is Satanism.
Right.
All right, this is so clear. Once you can break free from the mind control, you can see that people are enmeshed in Satanism.
Yeah.
And the whole Jewish and Christian thing is satanic. Mm-hmm. It is satanic. The Jews are some of the most manipulated people on our planet. number one, and they are worshiping Lucifer. The history of Jewish human sacrifice on this planet is miles long, in addition to the torture of infants through genital mutilation. What I want to stress is that circumcision in this country is happening because of Jewish influence. And I'm going to refer to these people as the Luciferian crypto-Jews who are in control of the medical system, who have been systematically lying since the late 1800s about the benefits of circumcision. Just the thought that the Creator has made an inadequate organ in the form of the penis, and that the Luciferians can come in and make it better by cutting off the most sensitive part. See, this is a satanic suggestion, that we have to cut off the foreskin in order to make it better. This is a satanic suggestion.
I have a question too. There's a I don't know if this is if this takes place. Well, I've seen like what do they call it, a brisk, when they do the circumcision, that the rabbi like sucks the baby's penis.
Yeah, in Orthodox tradition, after the rabbi mutilates the penis, he then puts his mouth on the penis and sucks off the blood. This is clearly a satanic ritual. There can be no question. Circumcision, even in a hospital, is done 96% of the time without anesthetic. And anybody that watches a video of a circumcision and allows himself to feel the anguish of the infant, to hear the baby's cries, these are not cries. These are screams of torture. The baby is being sexually tortured and genitally mutilated within 24 hours, usually, of its emergence from the womb in the hospitals. And babies are dying approximately every other day in the United States from circumcision. Babies are bleeding to death. They are having heart attacks on the table from the torture.
Yeah. Is there any way you can talk about birth rape? Because could you go more to birth rape then? Because I thought birth trauma and birth rape were the same thing. So
birth trauma is the whole package. Okay, birth trauma involves what April went through: being terrorized, being intimidated, being told your baby's going to die if you don't comply with their demands. It includes induction. It includes pitocin. It includes cytotec. It includes epidural. It includes episiotomy. It includes C-section. It includes cord clamping. It includes eye ointment that prevents the baby from making eye contact with its mother, which prevents the neurobiology of love from activating at birth. It includes vaccination. It includes vitamin K shots. All right, that's all birth trauma. I could go on. The list goes on. Okay, birth rape is it also includes a number of things. Circumcision is a form of birth rape.
Yeah.
Okay, altering an infant's genitals, cutting off a healthy part of a body is a form of birth rape. Episiotomy, right, altering a woman's anatomy surgically for no reason, is a form of birth rape. Women being forced to lay on their backs with their genitals exposed during labor and having people, strangers come in one after the other and put their hands inside a woman's laboring vagina. Okay? That's birth rape. Medical students coming in, learning how to do things on laboring women, sticking their hands one after another in the vagina of a laboring woman or in the vagina of a cow. Okay, they do this in medical school. They have students line up and shove their freaking arms inside the cows, one after the other, so that they can feel what it feels like inside of a cow. All right, it's rape. It is rape. It is, and medical students are being taught to do this. Medical students are being trained to do pelvic exams on anesthetized women who have not consented. Women are under anesthetic in teaching hospitals, every single one of them is in danger of being raped.
Wow.
By having medical students line up and put their hands inside of her vagina without her consent when she is under anesthetic.
Wow.
All right, doctors are having intercourse with women who are on paralysis drugs, who cannot move. Some of them have also been given drugs to create amnesia. You see, but the amnesia drugs don't always work. And some of these women are remembering that they've been raped. And they're reporting it. And several doctors are being brought up on charges because more than one woman has reported the same thing about the same doctor raping her when she is unable to move because of paralysis drugs and also being given amnesia drugs. In fact, in the 1950s when I was born, my mother and many mothers were given a drug called scopolamine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's called twilight sleep. So it's a mixture of scopolamine and Demerol.
It's a hallucinogen, that's right?
It's actually designed to create amnesia and to create compliance. Okay, it's called devil's breath in indigenous cultures because you can tell somebody that's been given this drug to empty out their bank account and give you all their money and they will do it and they will not remember that they did it. All right, that's what scopolamine is. Demerol, of course, when you mix scopolamine with Demerol, right, the mother, of course, is completely not in her right mind during the birth process. So women were tied to tables, strapped, gagged, their mouths, in the same way that an infant who's being circumcised is gagged with a pacifier so that he's choking on his screams, that he's strapped to the torture board called a circumstraint so that he can't move while he's being sexually tortured. The same thing was happening to birthing mothers in the 1950s. They were being strapped to tables and given these horrific drugs. And of course, the babies, the products of these births, like me, products of a Demerol birth, we're seeing repeatedly that these people grow up to be drug addicts, addicted to the same kind of drugs that their mothers were given during birth. All right, there's a lot of research going into this now that shows the connection between the drugs that a laboring mother is given at birth and the drugs that her children become addicted to later in life.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And it's all in my book. This is in my book, Birth Trauma and the Dark Side of Modern Medicine. I really encourage people to read this book. It has the potential to be one of the most important books of the century in terms of revealing what is going on and has been going on. Scopolamine is used in government mind control programs like MK Ultra and Monarch Mind Control.
I've seen a documentary on that. I think Vice did when they went to Colombia, and so I've heard of that. Yeah, and they use it for exactly what you described. But it's like
it's for mind control.
Yeah,
for mind control. It controls people's mind.
Yeah.
Every single thing that they are doing during hospital birth is a form of trauma-based mind control. Everything. Without exception. There is no benefit to any of it. There's not a single benefit to induction. All right, induction is a word that has been used purposefully. Induction, people are inducted into the military through mind control. People are inducted into the police academy through mind control. Babies are born into the Luciferian order. They are inducted into the Luciferian order through a process called induction. All right, induction is designed to impress upon the psyche of that baby that there are forces on this planet that are intended to take over that baby's destiny, to hijack the baby's destiny, and to control the baby's life. They're going to steal the baby's birth destiny, right? The baby should be deciding when it's ready to be born. The baby in a natural birth triggers the mother, it signals the mother's body. It says, I'm ready. And then the mother's body begins producing the neurochemicals and opiates and endorphins and all the good stuff of birth. Okay? They're stealing the baby's birthright. They're stealing the baby's birth destiny, and they are forcing that baby out of the womb before the baby is ready to be born. They are forcing a premature birth. All right, 25% of premature births in this country, at least 25%, are medically induced. They are forcing babies out of the womb before they are ready to be born. And they are forcing them out of the womb through the most horrifically violent methods imaginable, including the use of the drug pitocin. All right, they are aware that pitocin causes hyperstimulation of the uterus and puts babies into fetal distress. All right, it turns the uterus into a trash compactor. It smashes the baby instead of the uterus helping the baby to get born. All right, the uterus turns into an attack mechanism with this drug called pitocin. And they're going to say, well, you know, your baby might go into fetal distress, so we have to put this fetal heart monitor on your baby. So we're going to screw the damn thing into your baby's skull. We're going to put our hands up inside the vagina of a laboring mother and take this probe and literally screw it into the baby's skull. Okay, so now we're going to be blasting the ultrasound frequencies at the baby's brain throughout the entire labor. And even though adults can't hear these frequencies, babies hear the frequencies. All right, to a baby, it's like being in a train station, a subway station, right? And the subways are rolling in one after another. That's what the ultrasound frequencies are like to an infant in the womb. And they're blasting these frequencies at the brain, and they already know it causes brain damage to blast these frequencies at the brain. They're also going to break the water, all right? That beautiful watery amniotic sac that surrounds the baby is protective padding from the intensity of contractions. So they break it. And they're going to say, we're going to do this so that we can speed up your labor and really get things going. All right, but really they're doing it so that the intensity of the contractions can be felt all the more, so that your baby will be in pain. With that fetal heart monitor screwed into the baby's head, pulling and tugging at the baby's head every time there's a contraction. I mean, birth becomes obviously a crisis for the baby. In addition to pitocin causing these unrelenting contractions, one after another, non-stop. All right, that's not normal. In a normal birth, with natural oxytocin, a contraction will come, it will peak for about 20 seconds, it will ease off, and the body will rest. All right, it'll then begin to build again, it'll peak, it'll ease off, the body will rest. There's always rest, and there's a short peak of about 20 seconds during contraction. All right, not so with a pitocin birth, which, by the way, is more than 80% of the births in a hospital. Okay, pitocin causes abnormal contractions that are extremely painful and unrelenting. Okay, so now we have the fetal heart monitor, the amniotomy that broke the water, a baby forced out of the womb before it's ready to be born, and pitocin contractions smashing the kid. All right, now the mother's going to say, I'm in so much pain, I need an epidural. And this is solely because of the pitocin and the cytotec. Cytotec, by the way, is killing women and babies. And that's a whole other, I could talk about that for quite a while. But I want to talk about epidural because this is a really insidious thing. Let me say one more thing about pitocin. Pitocin is artificial oxytocin. When a mother has pitocin put into her body during labor, her body will not be making natural oxytocin. And natural oxytocin is necessary for human love and human bonding. Right? It's necessary for the letdown of breast milk and for the successful breastfeeding of a baby. All right? The mother's body should be flooded during labor and birth with natural oxytocin so that she can feed her baby and that she can love her baby. And also so that her baby's brain will be properly developed to also have its own body be able to pump oxytocin. But you see, the baby's oxytocin receptor sites are going to be altered because the mother's body is not flooded with oxytocin. Instead, the mother's body is flooded with pitocin. All right, so this baby can grow up to become an adult that'll become addicted to things like oxycodone. All right, that also mimics natural oxytocin, but it's not natural oxytocin.
Is that like heroin? Is it close to heroin?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. And of course, oxycodone is also very similar to pitocin. All right, we have a very strong connection between the drugs that are being used during labor and the drugs that people are becoming addicted to in adulthood.
So they're like opiates, like the opiate center.
They are, yes,
Okay.
Demerol. Okay. Similarly, an epidural is going to trick the mother's brain. Right, and once the mother receives the epidural, her brain's going to say, oh, there's nothing much going on here. I guess I don't need to signal things so that the release of the beta endorphins of birth, the opiates, natural opiates, and beta endorphins of birth. We don't really need to make those because there's nothing going on, because the mother can't feel any pain. She's not feeling anything with the epidural. The whole bottom half of her body ideally has become numb. All right, so her brain is tricked not to produce the natural opiates or beta endorphins of birth. And these are things that are necessary for love. These are things that are necessary to make the birth process pleasurable for the mother and the baby. All right, and they're not happening. Okay, so interestingly enough, with an epidural, even though the mother's not feeling any pain, her baby's going to be feeling more pain, because that baby also needs the natural opiates and beta endorphins of birth, and they're not going to be there because of the mother's choice to have an epidural. And of course, that mother's choice, sometimes it's because she's a callous, insensitive bitch, but most of the time it's because she's in pain from the drugs that they've given her, and she's in unbearable pain and needing help. And when they ask her to sign that epidural consent form, that form doesn't say, I agree to release my own pain and that my baby should experience more. All right, that's not on the form. They're not going to be told the truth about what this hideous drug that's injected directly into the cerebral spinal fluid of the mother's body. I mean, come on, folks. This is severe mind control. This is serious stuff. Altering the mother's brain, altering the mother's thinking processes, altering the baby's developing brain, altering the whole birth experience. Yeah. All right, then they're going to do a C-section. Because let me say, folks, once you allow induction, you got a 75% chance you're going to end up on that table, and they're going to forcibly cut your baby out of your body. Right? If you allow induction, and also if you allow pitocin, the chances of you ending up with C-section are going to skyrocket. And that's the goal. All right, they're actually, doctors are giving an order to nurses called hit to distress. Hit to distress means crank up that pitocin to the highest level right now so that we can deliberately put the baby in distress, and then we can say, oh my, look, your baby's in distress. We're going to have to do a C-section. This is all in my book. Nurses are blogging about it, that doctors are giving them the order to deliberately crank up that pit so that babies can be deliberately put into distress so that that doctor can move more quickly to a C-section. We're talking, why wait? Why would a doctor, an obstetrician indicates obstacles. All right, they are there to introduce obstacles to the natural birth process. These words mean something. Obstetricians are trained to do surgery. They are trained to cut off infant body parts, to cut open women's bodies. They are not trained in natural birth. I would venture to say most of them have never seen a natural birth. They are experts in creating chaos and crisis during birth. They are experts in presenting themselves as if they are God and getting extremely huffy if you dare to challenge their completely unnatural and unjustified authority. There is no legitimacy to their authority. They have no knowledge about natural birth. The overwhelming majority. There are exceptions, like Stuart Fishbein. There's some good MDs out there and good OBs. Right? The overwhelming majority are egomaniacs who have been under trauma-based mind control through medical school, who have disassociated, and who are now allowing an altered personality to inhabit their bodies. And they are sociopaths, like you said, April. Many of them are sociopaths. They don't give a damn.
You think through medical school they've become like a sociopath through the process of becoming a doctor, or do you think that this is a profession that attracts sociopaths, or both?
Both.
Okay.
Medical school is designed to train otherwise high-functioning people into sociopaths. Let me give you a brief example, okay? I interviewed a woman who was an animal science student. She wasn't even a veterinary student. She was an animal science student. And one of the classes that she had to take, okay, involved learned helplessness, where they had to go in and watch a dog that was put in a tank of water swim for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to try to save its life. If it went to the platform, it was electroshock. Okay? Once the dog gave up and allowed itself to drown, they would come in, save the dog, and then do it again the next day. This is what they call learned helplessness. Right? This is what they do in trauma-based mind control, right? They drown people. They get them to near drowning. Children, young children. And then the savior comes in and saves its life to get them to bond with the programmer. So the programmer acts as both the torturer and the savior. This is all trauma-based mind control. Okay, another thing that they had to do, another medical student described this. This is a full-on medical student, where all these medical students were in a room. They would bring in one dog on a table. And every medical student was instructed to cut the dog open, clean out the wound, and do suturing on the dog. So now this dog, and this goes against every human instinct, because dogs are the most loving animals. So everything in a human is going to recoil at the thought of torturing a dog. And even though they're told that the dog is anesthetized, the truth is the dog is on paralysis drugs, not anesthetized. And the students can feel this in their bodies. If they're in tune with their bodies, all of us can feel it. All right? Not only are the dogs on paralysis drugs, infants are on paralysis drugs. Infants in neonatal intensive care are being operated on without anesthetic. They are paralyzed during the surgery and given no anesthetic whatsoever so that they can feel everything that is happening to them. But they can't move and they can't scream. This is every single day in neonatal intensive care units. Babies are being tortured by being paralyzed repeatedly, sometimes 24/7, while they are intubated, tubes shoved up their nose, down their throats, cut open, feet lanced repeatedly, IV lines stuck in every, my baby was in NICU, she had IV lines stuck in her head, man. Everything that they do is torturing babies. Yeah. And animals. Veterinary medicine is the same. You bring your animal to the vet to be fixed. You better very well ask if that vet is going to use any anesthetic or not, because many of them are trained not to. These dogs are being altered. Cats are being altered with no anesthesia whatsoever, because they're also vaccinated and tortured in that way. And this is the medical system. It includes veterinary medicine. It is Luciferian-based.
Yeah. The more research we've done too, we realize that vivisection isn't necessary. Because we're sold on this idea that we have to do this to these animals in order to make better inventions and medications for humans. But all of this is just a load of crap.
It's all Satanism. The torture of animals, the systematic and repeated torture of animals, is Satanism. And as is the systematic and repeated torture of infants in neonatal intensive care units. They're still, to this day, doing what they call experiments on babies, premature babies, extremely premature babies in the NICU, where they're depriving them of oxygen to study the effects. This has been going on since at least the 1940s and 50s. So, of course, the babies are brain damaged, so they die. They're suffocated slowly. And
do they usually use orphans?
No.
Oh, wow.
Well, because that's an easy population. No, sometimes they're using babies that have parents who are signing consent forms that their babies should be part of the experiment. They're not told that their babies are going to be deprived of oxygen. Right. Okay, they're not told that their babies are going to be suffocated slowly, and that this is the same thing that the Egyptian Satanists did, something called soul lifting, where they would suffocate a person slowly. If you can draw out the death process over time, you can lift the souls and then offer up the souls to your demonic god. This is why they kill people slowly. This is why they torture people, right, to harvest their souls. It's the same thing with organ donation. Okay? People that are organ donors, beware, because if you end up in the hospital or your baby ends up in the hospital and they want your organs or your baby's organs, they're going to say that there's brain death. Brain death is a completely fictitious diagnosis specifically being used to get people to sign forms so that they can harvest the organs from living people. Organs are always harvested from living people. And these people are paralyzed while their chests are being cleaved open, and they're having their organs removed one by one, with the heart being the last organ that they take, after which they are, of course, really dead. They're being slowly murdered and tortured before death. And this is soul lifting. This is an attempt to harvest souls. And that's what medical institutions are. They're places for the harvesting of souls. They're places for the harvesting of infant cord blood and infant placenta. Because they can do black magic on your baby if they get your baby's cord blood or placenta.
Well, now I have a question. So the doctors aren't they're not like they don't know what they're doing. They're just doing what they're trained to do when the organ.
Some of them know what they're doing.
Okay.
And some of the nurses know what they're doing. That's not all of them.
Okay.
Many of them don't. Many of them don't. Many of them are idiots, mind-controlled robots.
You know, it's so funny. I come from a family of nurses, like RNs, and I remember my oldest great aunt. I don't think she understood. I don't think that she was malicious, but I remember having a conversation with her, and she was talking about how she didn't believe in organ transplants because she considered it a form of cannibalism.
Yep.
And I didn't understand what she meant.
Where do you think the organs are going? They're eating them. The Satanists eat them. Right? They ingest the blood and body parts of humans and animals, of course. They do this because they're so sick. If you ever want to get deep into this, Kurt Barker is a survivor of satanic ritual abuse, and he goes deep into the cannibalism and blood drinking of the Satanists. And they think, this is what they think, we are higher up on the food chain because we are a superior, the Satanists are superior. Just like the Jews think that they're a superior race.
Well, just like how we do animals, right?
Because that's right. Yeah. That's exactly right. So they think they're superior to us, who are the cattle, the Goyim, and therefore they should eat us. And they do.
So I have a question. What if somebody gets a heart, like you hear about a kid that has a heart, needs a heart transplant, and they're on the list and they get a heart, and then what do they wait to, so the kid gets the new heart, and usually people don't really last long with transplants anyway, so they eat it like when the kid dies or the person dies, it gets the organ?
Well, if the organ's been transplanted, obviously it hasn't been eaten. It's been transplanted into organs. But most of these organs are not transplanted. I don't believe for a second.
Okay.
That the cord blood or the placenta or the organs, this is all going to the Luciferians.
Okay, got you. Okay. So they're just saying they're taking the organs for somebody that needs a transplant, but they're not giving it to the person. Got you. Okay.
In the same way that they're encouraging parents to do what's called cord blood banking.
Yes.
Don't believe it for a second. They ain't banking that blood, okay? They're not. Your baby needs its cord blood at birth. That's what it's there for. It's there to go into your baby's body.
Right? It has stem cells, right? That's why it's so valuable to them.
It has, it's your baby's oxygen supply, number one. The baby hasn't been breathing while it's in the womb. All the oxygen comes through the blood. So when the baby comes out of the womb, it's not breathing. It's still receiving all of its oxygen through the blood that's pumping from the mother's body, through the placenta, through the umbilical cord into the baby. That is 1/3 of the baby's blood supply that's still pumping through that umbilical cord, filled with oxygen, filled with nutrients, filled with stem cells, for the proper development of that baby's immune system, for the proper activation of the baby's lungs, for the proper development of the baby's brain. All of this is absolutely essential that your baby receive all of his or her blood at birth. Okay? Yeah. If you do not let your baby get all of that blood, you can bet that your baby is going to need help in the future, that your baby's immune system is going to be compromised, and that your baby will probably end up in the damn neonatal intensive care unit because they have cut him or her off from his oxygen, from his blood supply, from his nutrients, from his stem cells, and harvested them and sold them off to the highest bidder.
Yeah, I saw an expose on cord blood banking where they were talking about it. It doesn't, because the way they sell it to parents is saying, why don't you get your kids cord blood banked so in case they get cancer or something, some kind of disease, we can use the stem cells in the cord blood to help find a cure. But the whole expose, not even getting into the cannibalism and the Luciferianism aspect of it, but the whole expose revealed that it's not, it's a sham.
It's a racket. It's a total Luciferian racket. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
If you don't want your kid to get cancer or leukemia, you don't vaccinate your children. You don't feed them genetically modified foods. You don't feed them genetically modified infant formulas. You know, you protect them. You don't expose them to pesticides and perfumes and neurotoxins everywhere in your environment, from cleaning your house with poison. You don't bathe your own body in chemicals that are toxic soap, toxic shampoo. I mean, get a clue. Wake up, people. Wake up, America. There are ways for us to clean up our bodies, to clean up our homes, to clean up our environments. Some of the things we can't help. We can't really help if they're spraying us with chemtrails. Okay, but we can take in chlorella, eat cilantro every day to get the heavy metals out of our bodies. Several times a week, at least, eat cilantro. We can research how to clean ourselves and make sure that we are not exposing ourselves and our children to these neurotoxins if we don't want them to get sick. Now, granted, most of us are under mind control, and we are innocent. We don't know. And so I speak harshly because I want people to snap out of the mind control. Not because I want people to, to feel terrible, because I don't. I just want people to wake up, and we have to protect our children. We are under attack, right? These forces are evil. The only way to conquer them is to get conscious of them and to break free from their machinations. Everything I just said is fairly easy to do. You go to the health food store, you buy organic, you buy non-toxic cleaning products, you use essential oils instead of perfumes, pure essential oils instead of perfumes. Right? You do not put pesticides on your lawn where your pets and your children are playing and where you are walking or growing food. This is common sense for anybody that's thinking. You don't expose your children to occult forces through religion, where they're going to be taught to worship a demonic god. You don't expose them to television, where you're putting them in front of a box that will mind control them, is designed to mind control them. Don't send them to schools. Homeschool them. Right? There's things that we can do, and it's a lot of work. Granted, it's very hard to break free from the Luciferian order, but we have the capacity to do it. And for those that want to do it, that really seek from the heart to want to return their families to love, I recommend reading the Ringing Cedars books, the Anastasia books, because there is a path laid out in those books. And it is a path to the reclamation of love, to the preservation of love in our families, and to the return of our planet to its pristine condition, so that we will be working in harmony with the real Creator. And in doing so, we can have a joyful life. It's only when we align our hearts and our minds and our commitment to our future with the real Creator, the Creator of love, right, that we can have a happy life. That happy life is not going to be forthcoming if we're worshiping Lucifer through Christianity or Judaism or Islam, for that matter. Right, the Father in every one of those religions is Lucifer. Only Lucifer. The Christians are following Christ, so they're following at least a good person. All right, but the father, the alleged father of Christ, is obviously a demon if he would crucify his own son in that satanic way. If he would have his own son satanically, ritually abused and murdered. And we have to see it for the sake of our children, and not bring our children up in these very sick occult traditions that are designed as a form of mind control.
Yeah, and I mean, just for the audience out there, if you think that any of this is exaggerated, it's absolutely not, because everything that you are talking and describing totally resonates, particularly with regards to birth trauma and birth rape, because I remember even as a young person, I was probably 17 or 18 years old, and I had to first go to my first pap smear or OBGYN examination, and being really uncomfortable with the fact that the doctor had to stick the speculum inside me and, put his hands around. And I thought, I was really uncomfortable with it, and I kept moving, and my entire life, every time I had this done, I always was uncomfortable, and I would start to move. And they treat you as if it's your problem, like, oh, you're too sensitive, or what, oh, wow, you're really sensitive. Most people this doesn't even bother them. So it's like they're raping you, and then they're at the same time telling you, well, this is no big deal, like, why are you, what's bothering you about this? And certainly with the birth rape, because, our doctor was a sociopath, maybe a Luciferian, I don't know, I wouldn't put it past him. He was that evil. And he broke my water while I was laboring with Aiden without telling me. Yeah. He just stuck his hand in there and he put the pitocin, he had the nurse put the pitocin in my drip without telling me. Yeah. And
I didn't know that. Motherfucker.
Yeah. I mean, well, they had put me up to an IV and said that I was receiving saline solution. And then I heard him order the nurse to do it, and then she just did it, and he just kept walking out of the room. He would just do things, and then he would leave, so that he didn't ever have to answer to anything. But I was going into labor naturally. So, see, Jeanice, he had scheduled me to have an induction about a week before I went into labor naturally, and the induction didn't take because Aiden had not dropped to my cervix. So he came in.
You went through that whole thing too. Oh boy.
Yeah, I went through it twice. But the first time I went through it about a week before he went into, or maybe not even a week, maybe it was just a few days before he went into labor naturally. The first time he tried to have induction of labor, I said no, and that's when he told me I was going to have a dead baby. Then the second time he went. I did agree because Aiden was a few days late, and I had already been so terrified from what he had said that I agreed. We went in, and the nurse hooked me up to the IV and started giving me pitocin. He wasn't there, and she said that I was sky high, meaning that the child had not dropped to my cervix, and so he wasn't ready. And so but they had already given it to me. He comes into the room. And she conveys this message to him. She's sky high. I don't really know why you ordered this induction. And he says, well, she had high blood pressure. And the nurse looks like, what? She's looking at the medical chart, and she's going, no, she doesn't. And he leaves the room. So she chases him down the hall and says, no, I can hear her down the hall saying, she doesn't have high blood pressure. What do you want me to do? And so then she comes back into the room and says, he told me to stop. So then so then she stopped, and I was sent home, and I'm contracting. I'm having contractions on the drive home, and essentially, someone else had given me a recommendation. They said, well, why don't you just go on a long walk, and then maybe he'll just come naturally. And sure enough, that's what happened. And he came on his own. But even though he had come naturally, they still put both of us through all of this torture by putting in the pitocin without asking me, breaking the water without asking me, and all of these things. And I felt at the time like I was being raped. I did. I felt that it was such a violation. Yeah. Because he stuck his hand inside me and didn't tell me what he was doing until I felt the water come out. And then I was in so much pain. I didn't want to have an epidural, but I was in so much pain. I agreed to have one, but then the anesthesiologist couldn't find a location in my spine to stick it. So for an hour, he poked my back, and it was the needle being poked into my back on top of being in active labor from having been given this pitocin. I said, I can't. I'm doing it. I can't do it. Sure. And so I ended up not having an epidural, and Aiden came out naturally. And he was a big boy at birth. He was almost 10 pounds, and I'm a fairly small frame, so that might have attributed to why he was not exactly fitting into the cervix. But, I mean, he was fine. Like, his will was, I always look at it this way, is that his his will was strong enough that even though they tried to force him out, he came when he wanted.
Yeah,
and that was it.
Yay, Aiden, go brother. Tell him to shove it. I love it.
His will was strong because he was born on 4/15, at 4:15 in the afternoon, and I always thought he knew what he was doing. He wasn't going to be forced into, coming when he didn't want to. But then after he was born, they took him away from me before I was able to breastfeed. They took him, and then he was gone for 6 hours. And I was calling, they had taken me into the recovery room, and I was calling for him, and I was calling down the nurses, and I'd just been through a rape, so I was like not going to run down the hallway. I mean, I was completely in pain. And so, but I was sort of paralyzed to sit there in the hospital bed, and all my family had gone to let me rest. So I was saying, where's my baby? Where's my baby? And they were going, oh, well, we'll check. We'll find out. Finally, 6 hours later, they bring him in. And so to this day, I always think, God, that absence of time that he was, and not only that, but then the nurse comes in and she tells me that, we poked his heel and he had low blood sugar, so we gave him a little bit of formula. And
I was evil. They're so evil.
Right, and I said, well, I didn't want that, because I wanted to breastfeed. And she said, well, we just did that because, he had a low blood sugar, and so I said, okay, fine. The next day, my husband and the family are back in the room, and my husband's reading the medical chart. He says, it doesn't say anything about low blood sugar. It says they couldn't find your room. They didn't know where you were.
Oh,
so they went ahead.
God.
So she lies to me, and then I could never, so the next day I told the head nurse, that this other nurse had come in and lied to me, and that they had kept him for 6 hours, and she said she was appalled and said she was going to find out what was going on, and I didn't know the nurse's name. I don't remember if she was wearing a name tag or not, but it's just, because I'd just been through a trauma, so I was completely out of it, and I was aware enough to question what was going on and to want to know where my baby was, but I wasn't, I still wasn't a full mind. And then, but they never found out who that nurse was. She just was sort of like a mystery. I never did, or maybe they did and they didn't tell me, but it was just this really, really bizarre thing. So to this day, I feel like that 6 hours of time, I have no idea what they did to him, what kind of torture they put him through.
Exactly right.
And so, I would say to anybody, I would never, ever in a million years recommend somebody go into a hospital for birth, because it is a place where just the very fact that they treat birth like a death, they treat it like a sickness, should tell you what they think of life, how much they value it. Because it's treated as if, the only thing hospitals are for is for crisis prevention. They're only supposed to keep you alive if you got into a major car accident and you're going to die. So the fact that they treat birth like that should tell you that they don't value life.
Well, something people should realize is that hospitals are places of death. They are places of disease. They are places of extreme toxicity and extreme trauma. If we were not so mind controlled, we would clearly see that what we are doing is insane, thinking that that's the kind of environment we want to bring our children into, where people are dying, people are sick, people have major trauma, blood trauma, car accident trauma, and poisons everywhere. Okay, the fact that all we see in hospitals is trauma, death, disease, toxicity is an indication this is a Luciferian institution. I'm sorry, but to me it's like so clear.
Yeah, it is clear. And
but we're indoctrinated through TV and, like Grey's Anatomy, all these programs that, romanticize doctors and it is, they are kind of like playing God, because they have the...
It is awful, and it seems like what you're describing, because we did a show not that long ago about mind control, and one of the things that struck me was how the techniques that they use for people who are, say, born into the Illuminati are the exact same techniques that are used widespread. We just don't recognize it. It's so but it's more subtle, I suppose. I mean, it's very obvious, like you say. Once you can see it very clearly. And even at the time, I felt raped. I felt like I had been traumatized. I felt like, I was worried about the effects that this might have on Aiden and stuff. But, we were still, fortunately, able to connect and able to bond, and I was able to breastfeed and all that. So I kind of put it behind me. But then once he was vaccinated, then of course that triggered all of those traumas, because then everything that he had already been put through just suddenly, got worse. And then he just, his body overloaded and he couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
But it's very, very real what you're describing, and it creates like, I would say maybe a Stockholm syndrome, because people are abused, but then in the name of, I'm doing this to help you. So it's like, while you're being raped, they're saying, I'm saving your life.
Yeah.
I care about you. I love you. I mean, they're not using the word love necessarily, but people get that attachment to their abusers because they think that these abusers are helping them. Mm-hmm. And this is why, Virstyne and I were talking on another show about how sad it is when we see little children going through chemotherapy or these types of things, because the parents have been put through this Stockholm syndrome where they think that these doctors are there to help them. They are killing their children in it, but then at the same time saying, well, I'm helping them.
Yeah.
And it messes with your mind. You cannot, especially when you're an infant and you're a toddler and these things are just starting to develop. It's like you just don't, you just can't see through it at all, and it's just going to completely traumatize and alter their brain and their development. And
there is a solution. The solution is to, number one, become conscious of what they are. Who's behind it, that their agenda is not an agenda of love, or if they don't have our best interests at heart. We should be trying to avoid the medical system like the plague, whenever possible, to avoid going to a hospital. Let's learn how to heal ourselves through natural remedies. Do we really think that something in a pill, a bunch of chemicals created in a pill by a bunch of Luciferians, is going to be more healing for us than the plants that the Creator has given us? Through herbs, we can, work with herbs, essential oils, homeopathy. There are so many energy work. Part of what I teach when I have a teacher training, by the way, and I have a curriculum that takes people from A to Z in terms of breaking the occult influences and getting ready, preparing to give birth to a fully pristine union that's born in love. And part of what I teach is energy medicine to help heal our trauma, because our circuitry, the circuitry running through our nervous system, through our brains and through our bodies, is holding the trauma of birth, our own birth and the birth of our children. And it really helps, energy medicine is one of the most effective ways to get it out of the body. And based on self-care, so that you don't have to go to a healer. You have the tool in your own fingertips, in your own hands. Once you learn the map of the body, you can help your children, and you can help yourself and your family, and the people that you care about. And these are the things we need to be seeking, not turning our bodies over to these people, and certainly not our children's bodies. April, I just want to say how sorry I am for what happened to you and to your baby.
Well, thank you for that. It was, it's still quite the struggle to try and restore Aiden's health, and that's the thing that I try to convey to people is if you start off with doing it right in the first place, you will unlikely have as many problems. And so I don't know what it was about him because it almost feels to me looking at all of these things that he had some sort of bullet on his, target on his chest, because it just seemed like he was just one trauma after another, starting from prenatal care.
Yeah.
And that was just the act of sitting in the waiting room for over an hour, and the way they would just, it was just torture after torture, and I would be sweating, and it just, because I'd be pregnant and hot, and they'd just leave me there waiting. It was, it was just one thing after another entirely.
It's just not human. It's totally, it's so callous and so much indifference and so much, we have to stay away from it. There's no reason. Prenatal care is a freaking joke. There is no benefit to it whatsoever. I don't care what they say. There's no benefit to it. We have done this for millennia without the medical system. We were fine, despite the fact they say that women were dying from childbirth. In truth, the United States has the highest infant and maternal mortality rate in the industrialized world. Babies and women are dying in droves in this country. And it is because of the medical system. It is because of technological interference during pregnancy and birth. There is no benefit to any of it. Although most people want to say something, but still, yeah.
Oh, go on and then finish your thought and I'll ask you something. Hopefully I'm better now.
It's still coming in really unclear, but I know you want to say something. My thought's complete. Go ahead, please.
Just going on, because I know we're running low on time, but I wanted to ask you, because I know you were talking about the whole genocide, basically, or like it being an agenda. In an interview, I heard you talk about the genocide of the white race, and when I look at like the Gates Foundation and all these charities that are going to third world countries, from my point of view, it seems like they're targeting people of color. So when I heard you say that, I was interested. I wanted to see why. Is it just like how am I trying to say? How do you see like the white race being attacked as well? I guess.
Let me phrase that this is a Jewish agenda. Okay, again, I want to say there are Luciferian crypto-Jews who have an agenda to destroy the white race. Now, if we take those words and we use the words instead to destroy pristine humans, okay, that's what their target is. Their target is those who are born with the capacity for love, those who are born of the real Creator. And we are being targeted by those who are not born of the real Creator. This doesn't necessarily mean they are off-world aliens or anything like that. It means they have come from a different Creator, and they are made differently. And their purpose is to destroy what the Creator has brought forth, especially pristine humans. If you read the Ringing Cedars books and you see what a pristine human is capable of, okay, that's who I think they're talking about when they say they're looking forward to the destruction of the white race. They're looking forward to the destruction of pristine humans, and this is part of why, they also are very big on creating mulatto children, because in their eyes, the white race has to be infiltrated by lesser races, and this is in their mind, okay? The people with brown skin, people with black skin are lesser, and so they're not as good as the pristine humans who are white in their mind. So we have to get the inbreeding going on. And that's why you see this influx. They're letting all the brown and black skinned people into the United States. We have a huge influx into the European Union. This is because of the Jewish agenda. And again, I want to clarify, I'm talking about Luciferian crypto-Jews. I don't think most Jewish people have a clue what's going on. I think most of them are pawns in the Jewish game. All right, the Jews have been kicked out of 109 countries because everywhere they go, this cult, it's a Luciferian cult, steals the wealth, pollutes human sexuality through pornography. Right? The Jews completely own pornography. They completely own the media. Right? And their agenda is to destroy whatever culture embraces them and accepts them. And so they've been kicked out of 109 countries, and all the Jewish people are blamed. So it's time for the Jewish people to wake up. They're worshiping a Luciferian god, Lucifer himself, and they're part of a cult. And the people who are in charge of that cult don't give a damn about them. any more than they give a damn about us. Right? If all the Jewish people get kicked out of another country, they could care less. Right? Their agenda has been to destroy the United States. And they are damn close. They are in charge of our government right now, our medical system, the judicial system, the media, the schools. Where do you think Common Core came from? Where do you think who's the brainchild? Who brainstormed this idea to teach 5-year-olds about masturbation and homosexuality?
I'm a teacher, so. I know what evil is. Oh, I was a teacher. I'm not a teacher anymore.
Who brainstormed the idea to teach 10-year-olds about fisting, putting an entire arm in somebody's anus, and teaching them that it's a form of intimacy? Okay? This is going on in American schools today. It's all in my book. And the same thing, this is the same cult that brought circumcision here. It's time to see it. It's time to see them. It's time to name them. We've been so mind-controlled, we're afraid to use the word Jew and to point out that it is the Jews that are doing this. Well, let's say it clearly. People calling themselves Jews are behind this. They are Luciferian Zionists. Their agenda is to take over the world and to create a world in Lucifer's image. The entire technological world is a Luciferian concept. The technological world has been superimposed over God's world. And it has been designed to separate us from God's world, to separate us from understanding our place in all of creation, and to toxify God's world. That's what the technological world does. You take a living thing and you turn it into a dead thing, and then we think we're really clever. Let me take these trees, bulldoze them, and build a house after I murder all these trees. I mean, the technological world itself is Lucifer's creation. So that's why I recommend people read the Ringing Cedars book so that you can get a glimpse into the pathway back home to the Creator's design, to the pristine origins of mankind and of our planet. Because it's beautiful, it's magnificent, it should be filled with love. And if we can begin to heal our trauma before we give birth to any more children, and if we can bring our children in love, our children can be born in the image of the Creator, the real Creator, instead of in the image of Lucifer. And our children will understand how to restore this planet to its pristine look. And that's what's needed at this time. That's what my curriculum does, is to try to help people understand what that path looks like. Anyway, the teacher training starts July 21st. If anybody's interested, please go to my website at birthofthenewearth.com. Read about the curriculum. Read about the teacher training. Get a copy of my book. If you get my book from my website, you can buy it directly through me. That helps me because Amazon takes a big chunk of the money. They also do a lot of the work, so it's okay if you buy it through Amazon because they create spaces printing it and sending it out and all that. But if you buy it through me, I get a little bit more money. And you can go to my website at birthofthenewearth.com. There's so much information on my website. I really recommend checking it out.
Yeah, I think that, I would have loved to have known all this stuff, years ago before I started having babies, because I really believe that trauma blocks us from being able to heal when we don't look into it. And we don't really even understand about, it's not just sitting on a psychotherapist, couch and talking about your feelings, but I mean, it's like it invades your cells, and your cells your body just doesn't even heal from disease. You start to accumulate disease because of your trauma. And so many of us have no clue. I mean, this trauma started when we were babies and we were infants, and we carry that into our lives as adults and having, our children, and then they're affected by trauma. So I really appreciate your work, because it's been very instrumental in me seeing this, because I was sort of on this path just before I became introduced to your work, when I had my daughter, my third child, and I had seen the striking difference from going through the hospital birth experience to having it, through with the midwife. And she never raped me. She never put her hands inside me. She never did anything without my consent or describing what she was doing. I mean, so I didn't, the baby never had any ultrasound. She never had any of that stuff because, she, at that, and then that was what I really looked at that, and I said, well, why, if she's okay with me not having any of this stuff done, then why do we do these things? Is it really necessary?
No.
And so, and that's right. And that's when I started to kind of look at that more, because I've been on this vaccine journey for so many years, and I've been looking very deeply into that. And I was pretty certain that that's on some level a ritual sacrifice. It's like just everything they do seems to invade you. It's rape. It's like, and it always has to do with the blood and the and taking the placenta and the cord and all these things. And it's disgusting. It's very and you feel that level of violation, like your DNA is taken at birth when you have a hospital. Once you consent to going into a hospital, it's like you are consenting to be tortured, because they're going to take the DNA, they're going to take all these things, and they're not going to tell you. So you unwittingly consent to all these things, because they won't give you, and no one, I don't believe in informed consent, because no one consents if they're really informed. I don't believe that exists. No one would ever consent to vaccination or to hospital. You just wouldn't do it. You'd take your chances. Even if you didn't know all the information, you still would take your chances, because once you realize what they're really doing, you just wouldn't consent to it at all. And but yeah, it was such a striking difference, and I really, not going through the hospital, and how much I felt and how healthy I was, and how, I just thought, this is how it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to be stressed out during pregnancy. You're not supposed to be traumatized, and you're not supposed to be feeling afraid of your doctor, and that this person has some power over you. You're supposed to be like your relationship with whomever is your birth coach, if you choose to have one. Even that, I don't even necessarily know how much they even need to be there, but I did feel comforted by her being there. But but it was nice, and it just is a different. I think that they have a different mindset, and that's not all midwives, because even some of them have to go through, or will go through, some sort of this trauma training. But
many midwives.
Yeah. Right, and so it's really up to the individual midwife, and if she's going to recognize that keeping the mother low stress is going to, during the pregnancy, is going to create a better outcome during delivery. And so if they understand that, then that's somebody who's probably going to be comforting to you when they're there. If they don't understand that and they're stressing you out and saying, well, you really should get this test and blah, 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 then you got to fire that person, or just don't even go there. That's the way I feel.
Sometimes it takes us 1 or 2 births. If we were born in a hospital ourselves, women tend to give birth the way they were born. So for many women, it's like the first 1 or 2 births, they're in the hospital, they think it's normal. It takes until the 3rd birth for them to say, maybe I should get a midwife and try doing it at home, It didn't go so well the first 2 times.
Yeah. So I highly recommend, I just received your book in the mail, so I'm really excited to start reading that. And we're out of time here, but this has been a really great show, and I want to thank you so much for your work, and it's groundbreaking work. I really think that it's going to save a lot of people's lives if they research this before they start having families, or even if they have started, if they're planning to have more children. I mean, just for yourself. I mean, just in healing your own wounds from hospital and medical trauma of birth and all of that. It's just, it's really,
The key is to do the work prior to the conception of children. So if we could, the fact that they don't teach anything about conscious conception or healthy pregnancies or gentle birth in the school system is an indication that the schools are also polluted and not teaching anything of value. There's nothing more important than creating a family and understanding the keys to preserving love in our families. So that's what the curriculum I've created is designed to do, is to fill that void and to help people prepare prior to conception. If you're already pregnant, it's never too late. If you've already had children, it's still not too late to heal ourselves and to understand the keys to helping our family. So, yeah, please check out my website, birthofanewearth.com.
Yeah, so please check out her book at birthofanewearth.com. We really appreciate you being on the show today, Jeanice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, so much. God bless you both.
Hello, thanks for having me on your radio. Even though we're not from a famous rock and roll band, if we were, even though we sound a little like we are, we'd definitely wear a Conspiracy Realist t-shirt, because they're gear, aren't they? Oh yeah, they're really gear. I want to write a song about them. Conspiracy Realist t-shirts at truthatease.com. I gotta think of the middle eight. Shop.truthatease.com. What does that mean? It's the internet. What's that? I don't know. It's a net. It's between things. Shop.truthatease.com. What's that? It's where you get Conspiracy Realist t-shirts. Oh, gear.
Hey there, welcome back. Thanks for listening to Truth or Talk. You can find us at truthertalk.com. So hey, Virstyne, we just interviewed Jeanice Barcelo.
Yeah, I know nothing. I just realized how much I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I knew a lot of that stuff though, but a lot of the stuff I didn't know, and I'm anxious to read her book.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was, again, we definitely could have had her on for longer than scheduled. I mean, we don't want to over, but I mean, she's just a wealth of knowledge. So,
yeah, it was right. She was a wealth of knowledge, and it was really incredible. And when she talks, it's like you just have to be quiet and listen, And so that's where we just kind of were like, no problem going over, because it's so worth it to hear what she has to say. And I know she's just barely scratching the surface.
Oh, totally. And she answered. I'm sorry. She answered all of our questions within like 5 minutes. We had like so many questions, and she answered them all within the first, few minutes of her talking. So.
Yeah, she's quite incredible, and her work is that I think that she's doing something that not a lot of other people are doing, and that's where it's very a welcomed kind of voice in this movement or in this thing, because I don't really hear a lot of other people or anybody really.
Yeah, she's the first person I've actually heard that's gone this deep into birth trauma and Satanism and all this stuff, and it was weird. I mean, I didn't know. Honestly, because I asked her about the white race, about how that's being destroyed, and it's interesting because I heard from other people's point of view, like I said, that I'm interpreting, from what I see, it seems like they're trying to go after, like they're doing, like the Gates Foundation, right? They're going into these countries and they're giving people vaccines, and they have a lot of GMO farms there, and people are just dying, a lot in those countries. And I'm thinking, wow, it seems like they're targeting like brown-skinned people of color, Asian people. And then I've heard other people say that have been studying the Illuminati say that they don't like, brown-skinned people or people of color. And then I heard her say that on an interview that she feels it was like the white race that's being targeted. I mean, honestly, in trueness, I think it's everybody. I think it's human beings,
Right.
Then all of us are being targeted. And it's funny, when I was asking her about the pristine thing, I'm like, I didn't really know like how to take that and like the mulattoes and stuff, because I'm not, I'm part white. I'm not all black. I'm black, but like my grandmother's mixed. I have mixtures in my family. Like I don't know how to take that, without.
Well, here's how I understood what she's saying. From their perspective, not from her perspective, but from their perspective, they see the whites as superior. Okay? Mm-hmm. So they want to destroy us equally as they want to destroy the rest of everybody else. So by encouraging the mixing of races, from their perspective, that is somehow making us making us lesser, if that makes sense. Like, so if you're looking at it in terms of the Luciferian aspect, so they're the Lucifers, and and we are the children of God, and so they're envious of our capacity to love and the things that they don't know how to do. So that's from their perspective. That's what I got from what she was saying. Is that is how how they perceive it. So they want to, because they see the white race as I forget what the word she used,
pristine,
but
pristine.
Pristine.
Yeah.
They see the white race as pristine. So therefore, by bringing us down to the level of people of color, it sort of takes away our superpowers or whatever for just being white. That's the way I look at it. And if I don't listen to Red Eyes Creation. I know a lot of people out there do, and they're really, really popular. But they've been talking about this for a long time. And so I don't know what their perspective on it is, but that's how I understood what she said.
Got you. Yeah. So, and it's funny though, because I listen to, I guess, more like Afrocentric stuff too. Like somebody sent me, forgot what the guy. I want to say it's Bobby Hemmett, right? Who would talk about a lot of the stuff that we talk about, right? They have the same kind of worldview that there is not a superior race, but there's like some kind of alien race that wants to destroy the earth and take the earth over, and they think it's white people. So it's like reverse, you know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of like, I'm sorry. It's like, so they think it's basically, they think that the black people, the brown skinned people are pristine, and the white ones are the one that taint the race. And they're kind of like not, they don't believe in race mixing for that purpose. So it's interesting, right? Just the perspectives, but at the end of the day, I think, people are people, I think it's beautiful to mix races and, cultures,
right.
But yeah, it's fascinating.
But I think what she's saying is that they don't think it's beautiful.
Oh, no, I know.
Yeah. They think.
Yeah, they think it's. But I'm just saying that, and there are people that are black that believe that they believe that it's the opposite, right? So they believe that like the black people are pristine or brown skinned people are pristine, and the white people are the ones that taint the race and take away the black superpowers. So I'm just saying it's really interesting that those two perspectives, but they have the same views on everything else. But so I guess there are people that just believe at the end of the day that their race is more better than everybody else, and that's not true. I think it's fallacy. But I don't believe that blacks are better than whites or vice versa. I don't believe that. But I'm just saying it's interesting that
that would be all a divide and conquer.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly divide and conquer. So that's another way to kind of keep us infighting. That's what I was trying to get to. Definitely.
Yeah, because I mean, people fall in love, and if they do so based, whether or not they're mixed race or not, is not really relevant. And they decide to have a family and so on. But if they're going to encourage it, it's just because of their sickness. It says about them, not about any of us.
So, on both sides, because I'll listen to some of like the Afrocentric stuff, and I'll be like, I'm with you totally, and they're like, cracker. I'm like, oh shit, like, oh my god, I was so with you until you're fucking racist, but you're racist. You know what I mean? Like Farrakhan. I think we've talked about Farrakhan. He speaks a lot of truth. He spoke out against vaccination and stuff, but I think he's a racist psychopath. Yeah,
I mean, a lot of this, the people that are going to be practicing, let's just use her word how she's describing it, this Luciferian cult, are going to use these types of techniques because they're not going to come out and be like, hey, I'm a psychopath, woo! Yeah. I'm going to destroy you, check me out. They're going to come out as, and they'll bring in, like Farrakhan, he'll bring in people of color, black people, and they'll be attracted to him because he's saying,
they'll listen to him. They won't listen to like G.W. Griffin. or what's his name, G. Edward Griffin, right? They'll listen to Farrakhan.
Right, and then and so they'll come in and they'll listen to this guy, and then he'll say some things, he'll throw out some marbles of truth, some things that resonate with them, and because so the other thing I got from what she was talking about, with regards to how we don't use that much of our brain, and there's a reason that we only use a portion of our brain, or only a portion of our DNA. I'm thinking we actually are more intelligent than what we have been made to believe. And this thing called intuition, and your sixth sense, or however you refer to it, is this thing that understands when you feel and hear truth. And so when people they hear him speaking truth, they understand it, it resonates with them, and they go, yes, I get it, you're saying the truth. And so their guard is down. So then when he's going to lie to them or try and manipulate them, they've let their guard down. So now they're going to trust him. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I think it's done. And this mind control thing works. It's like, you've got to throw a little bit of that out there, because people
you can't tell flat out lies, because people will, you have to tell. Like,
well, you can, but you have to. But you have to like.
To make it the truth, though, you have to have
exactly.
Yeah. It can't be a total lie. And I apologize, because that what is it, G. Edward Griffin was a horrible analogy to compare to Farrakhan. So because I don't think that he has any malintent. That's why so I needed to think of a white person that speaks truth but has malintent in the end. So I couldn't think of one off the top of my head. I know there's some. That's a terrible analogy. I just couldn't think of a white person off the top of my head that has malintent. Oh, maybe like a Peter Joseph. You know what I mean? Like, I think like he has really good ideas, and you look at the illustrations that Jacques Fresco makes, and you're like, wow, this is a really good idea, but there's something like not right with him and the Zeitgeist movement. Like, who runs the robots? Tell me, It seems a little bit kind of like phony, and he seems like a bit of a wolf in sheep's clothing,
Right. Yeah, and it's somewhat of a put off, just his.
But he speaks a lot of truth. Like, I liked his movies.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, there was a lot of truth in Zeitgeist and stuff. It resonated with a lot of people, and it got people thinking and talking. And I think they were good movies. I'm not knocking his movies, but when I don't know, just the movement. Anyway. So that's the analogy. It'd be Farrakhan and Peter Joseph. Right?
Yeah. Right, there you go. That's a better analogy. But
even though Peter Joseph doesn't strike me as being racist, he just strikes me as being like, I don't know. Anyway.
Right.
That's the best I can do for now, off the top of my head.
Well, maybe just a little snooty. He just kind of puts him. That's the way I look at it. It's just I don't really know. I don't really care. I just because for myself, I choose not to really follow his work, because I just don't really believe in it. But and he just puts me off a little bit. But yeah, it's so. Her stuff is really interesting, though. No one's really going that deep in that. We've done a couple shows with Joni Abbott on birthing and natural childbirth and so forth, but I don't know anyone who's really going this
she
far.
Has balls. I mean, you have chutzpah. Like, she's
indeed,
she is not playing, because I'm just thinking, just knowing what we know, it's fine with us. But I mean, when you're trying to communicate to somebody that's not familiar with any of this stuff, it must sound totally just out there,
Yeah.
Because
no, right, yeah, exactly. And even people in the natural childbirth movement, they won't take it that far. They'll just be like, oh, they just want money, or it's just a thing in the system, or this and that. But if you think about the monetary system, it's kind of like an illusion. I mean, they just print money out of thin air anyway. So what is all this stuff with money? It's just kind of, I think, another tool to just keep us down and keep us suppressed, and that we have to be dependent on this thing.
Yeah, well, that was saying dependence, right? And just like keeping people, because we have to work for basic needs that we shouldn't have to work for. We're working for a shelter and food, and and of course we have toys and fun things like that. But just you think about it. Why do we have to work for a place to live and for food and for water? It's ridiculous.
Right.
You have to pay for fucking water. You think
Yeah.
about that sometimes. I get really upset, you know?
Well, I mean, and then,
ridiculous.
yeah, and then you have to pay extra to have it fluoridated. I mean, it's like, what? But I don't want that, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's just, it's really bizarre. But, I mean, if you lived on your own, you know, you would have to go and get your own water. So it's, so they're saying, well, we're getting it for you. We're making it convenient. So now you have to pay us instead of just doing it yourself. But see how that leaves you dependent?
Yeah.
Because now you don't know how to collect rainwater. You don't know how to distill water from a lake so that you can so that it won't be toxic to you.
You don't have
know,
a choice, though. They're not making you have a choice. It's not like, well, either we can do it for you and you pay, or you can get it for free. No, you live in a city. You're you're fucked.
Yeah.
Just like, you know,
Well,
bottled water or tap.
Right. Well, you can collect rainwater, but
Not in L.A. It's
there's
illegal.
not enough rain. Exactly.
Well, yeah, hey, that's not enough rain, and on top of that, it's illegal. Did you know that? That's crazy.
I heard that it was illegal, but I mean, I wouldn't really care about that.
I'd still do it anyway if I had a house and a means
I
to do
heard
it, but
that
still, it's like...
Yeah. I heard that it was illegal, but I saw this guy driving down the highway the other day, and he advertised his truck, said that he installs rainwater collections for people. So maybe it's illegal for you to do it yourself, but then somebody who has a license or something can do it. I don't know, whatever. But I saw that, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, I mean, but I would like to know how to do it myself, or you can, it seems like a good...
This is good
homeschool experiment you can do with your children, you know, like how to build a rainwater collection. I've seen those on like Pinterest and do it yourself, how to teach your child how to collect rainwater or build one of those mechanisms that will naturally filter the water. But when it comes from the rain, I mean, because we have pollution and we have chemtrails, it's not as pure as it could be, but it should be pure and should be drinkable. And just like when it comes straight from a spring, you know. And then there's also, people can go to, there's a website, and I forget what it's called, but it's, you can go and it tells you where there are natural springs. And you can find them in your area, and you can collect straight from a spring. So that's one way, but I mean, yeah, you can bottle it yourself, and that's completely free, and that's completely legal, and that's why companies like Nestle and Coca-Cola will go in and they'll tap those springs, and they don't pay a damn thing except for the labor that they have to pay people to do it for them. Mm-hmm. But then they tap those springs and they siphon them, and they're destroying our ecosystems that way. That's another way that they're destroying our ecosystems through this bottled water stuff. I mean, that's a whole nother truth of talk, I have to say, because you could really go down a whole road about water, and there's quite a few good documentaries and stuff about that. There's one called Flow that talks about how it disturbs the flow and destroys the ecosystem when they're tapping these things. But I mean, when you're talking about, you know, it is weird that we're paying for water, and we're paying for, you know, food. Pretty soon it'll be paying for air, you know, like carbon credits. You'll be paying those, you know, things like that. But anyway, Jeanice's work is invaluable. I think people really need to check it out, and I'm very excited. I can't wait to read her book. So, just researching her work, it's been an eye opener to me. It's really resonated, and I think it's instrumental in healing, you know, my own healing from birth trauma, and in ways that it's given me food for thought in how to work in healing my son, because I've been working on it for so many years, and his progress has been difficult, we haven't seen a whole lot of progress through a lot of stuff we've been doing. So my wonder, or my curiosity that has been piqued since being introduced to her work, is how much of these things are due to trauma-based blocks on your healing. And these Luciferians, you know, do they know this? I imagine they do.
You imagine they what?
I imagine that they know that your trauma is a block to your healing. I imagine that they know that it won't, once they have traumatized you and raped you and given you all these drugs and these pills, that because you've been so effectively traumatized emotionally, that it's going to make it harder for you to heal through from vaccine damage or from,
anything.
Exactly.
More also more susceptible to being addicted to drugs or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really, really interesting what she said, too, about the drug addiction and how you will become addicted to the types of drugs that you're given. That makes a ton of sense to me. It makes so much sense to me because you do become addicted to the things that you get used to, especially during, and that includes abuse. That includes being abused by people, and that's where then abuse can become an addiction, and you'll see the same person getting abused over and over and over again. And that's not by accident. That's in part because they're addicted to it. And then it's also because the psychopath actually can identify a person who is an easy target. So they can see it in you because Ted Bundy used to say he could tell a victim